The knock came at precisely 7:32 a.m., sharp and deliberate. Each pound against the front door, echoing through the quiet suburban home like the strike of a gavel. Marcus Williams froze mid-sip of his morning coffee, the bitter taste lingering. As his instinct sharpened, wasn't just the sound of a neighbor stopping by or a delivery driver being careless. No, this knock carried intention, authority, or at least the imitation of it. Marcus set his mug down silently on the counter. He didn't move toward the door right away. Instead, he listened. Years of training had rewired his body to measure. Silence. Two-way hesitation like an instrument. There it was, the faint shuffle of boots outside. Not one pair, but two. Heavy, rigid steps, meant to sound official, though to Marcus' trained ear, they betrayed nerves.
Oh.
One man shifted his weight too often. The other tried too hard to stand still. He glanced at the digital clock on the microwave. Too early for a friendly visit. Too precise for a coincidence. Finally, the knock came again. Louder this time. "Open up, police business." A deep voice called out. Marcus exhaled slowly. Police business. That was laughable. He'd worked with. Real officers all over the country watched them kick in doors with a rhythm only experience could teach. Whoever was outside didn't have it. Still, he approached the door, his broad shoulders relaxed, steps quiet across the hardwood floor. When he swung the door open, two men stood on his porch. They were dressed in tactical gear, black vests, dark pants, badges, clipped awkwardly. To their belts. The one on the left had a thick beard and wore sunglasses despite the overcast sky. The other was younger, lankier, his clean-shaven face betraying a twitch of nervousness. Both had holsters strapped tight against their thighs. But Marcus noted the little things immediately. Brand new boots without a speck of dirt, gear that didn't match department standards, patches that looked like they'd been ironed on last. "Night, Mr. Williams," the bearded one barked, his tone rough, rehearsed and off-key. "Step outside."
Outside.
"You're under arrest for violating HOA regulations." Marcus raised one eyebrow, his lips twitching at the absurdity. HOA regulations. Arrest. It was a bad joke, delivered with a straight face. He leaned casually against the doorframe, his posture loose, though every fiber of his body was calculating. HOA regulations. Marcus repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "Did I forget to mow my lawn? Or was it the recycling bin? I can never keep track." The taller man tightened his jaw. "Don't get smart. We're serious. Step outside now." Marcus's eyes swept over them again, subtle as a predator studying prey. Their fingers hovered near their holsters, but not with the relaxed confidence of men trained to draw and fire under pressure.
I know.
These were hands that shook ever so slightly, hands that didn't know violence beyond bravado. "Which precinct handles lawn violations these days?" Marcus asked smoothly, his voice calm but edged with a dangerous curiosity. The men exchanged a quick glance, a flicker of uncertainty flashing across their faces. That was all Marcus needed. His lips curled into a faint smile. They weren't professionals. They were imposters, pretenders. But Marcus didn't move, not yet. Instead, he allowed silence to stretch between them, testing their patience. He knew what men like this hated most, losing control of the moment. The younger one shifted his stance, impatience seeping through. "Look, don't make this harder than it has to be," he said, trying to sound authoritative but landing somewhere. "Closer to desperate?" Marcus chuckled softly, the sound low and amused. "You boys are out here at 7 in the morning trying to convince me the HOA has arrest powers. I'll give you credit. It's creative." The bearded man's voice hardened. "Enough jokes. You're coming with us now," still leaning against. The doorframe, Marcus tilted his head slightly, his deep brown eyes narrowing. Behind the calm exterior, another side of him stirred. The side that had stared down cartel leaders, dismantled gangs, and infiltrated terrorist cells. The side that criminals across the country whispered about in fear, though they rarely knew. His name. He was a ghost in their world, a man who always showed up when they least expected him and left trails of destruction in his wake. Marcus. Williams was not just a man living in a quiet neighborhood, tending to his lawn and sipping coffee. On slow mornings, he was one of the most feared agents in the FBI, a man with a reputation so brutal that entire crime syndicates adjusted their operations to avoid his radar. And yet here he was, standing in sweatpants and a plain white t-shirt, watching two imposters try to arrest him over HOA regulations. The absurdity almost made him laugh again. But instead of laughing, Mark studied them with the same intensity he reserved for high-level suspects. The gear was sloppy, but deliberate enough to fool an ordinary civilian. Their stance was aggressive, but not disciplined. Their eyes betrayed. More than their mouths, they weren't here on some neighbor's petty grudge. No, this was organized. Someone had sent them. Someone who wanted Marcus out of his home, vulnerable, maybe even gone. Marcus let the silence drag once more, his mind already moving 3 steps ahead. He could take them down right here. Disarm them, expose them, call it a day. But something deeper told him to play along, to see where this charade would lead. Because if these two were bold enough to knock on his door in broad daylight with fake badges, they weren't the real threat. They were pawns. So Marcus straightened slowly, his frame filling the doorway, a calmness radiating from him that unsettled both men. "All right," he said finally, his voice even almost too cooperative. "If it's that serious, let's talk about it. But you'll forgive me if I don't take the word of 2 guys in costume without some proof." The younger man opened his mouth to protest, but the bearded one cut him off. "Badge is all the proof you need. Don't make us drag you out." Marcus's eyes flicked to the badge, the cheap metallic sheen giving away its counterfeit nature. He almost felt insulted. If they were going to impersonate law enforcement, the least they could have done was by something convincing. But instead of calling it out, Marcus smiled faintly and stepped just inside the threshold. "Drag me out?" he repeated softly, his tone more dangerous than any shouted threat. "Boys, you don't want to try that." The 2 imposters stiffened, and for the first time doubt flashed openly on their faces. Marcus had seen that look 1,000 times, the realization that they were standing in front of someone far more dangerous than they had been led to believe. Still, he didn't move. He let them think, let them stew in the weight of their mistake. 'Cause Marcus Williams never rushed. He didn't need to. Every moment, every word, every breath was part of the trap he was already setting. And as he stood there, coffee cooling on the counter behind him, sunlight breaking faintly through the clouds outside, Marcus knew one thing for certain. These men thought they were here to control him, to intimidate him into submission. The reality was much darker. They had no idea whose door they had just knocked on. The younger man was the first to lose patience. His jaw tightened and he stepped forward, fumbling in his vest pocket. A pair of cheap-looking zip ties glinted in his hand. "Hands behind your back," he ordered, his voice cracking with a tremor he tried hard to bury under bravado. Marcus didn't move, simply watched, his dark eyes steady, his body language infuriatingly calm. Years of interrogations had taught him that silence was a weapon sharper than any blade. The imposter hesitated for a fraction of a second, unnerved by Marcus's lack of fear, then reached out and grabbed his arm. It was a mistake. In one fluid motion so fast it blurred. Marcus twisted his wrist, forcing the man's arm into a painful lock. The imposter yelped, his knees buckling as Marcus spun him around effortlessly. Before the taller one could react, Marcus slammed the smaller man down onto the porch, his cheeks scraping the wooden boards. The zip ties slipped from his hand and clattered uselessly. The taller man shouted, his hand darting for his holstered pistol, but Marcus was already in motion. With a precise kick, Marcus pinned the weapon in place before it even cleared the holster. The man grunted in surprise, stumbling back against the porch railing. "You don't even know how to draw properly," Marcus said coldly, his voice low and razor-sharp. His tone wasn't mocking. It was the voice of experience, of countless encounters where hesitation meant death. The pinned imposter squirmed under his grip, his breath coming in panicked gasps. The other one froze, his wide eyes betraying shock. He hadn't expected resistance. He certainly hadn't expected his partner to be neutralized in less than 3 seconds. Who the hell are you?" The taller man stammered, his bravado stripped. Away in an instant, Marcus leaned down, tightening his hold on the man beneath him until a groan of pain slipped out. His lips moved close to the younger one's ear, his words icy. "I'm the man you should have never come after." Yanked the fake badge from the imposter's vest and held it up to the light. Cheap plastic, flimsy metal trim, numbers that didn't even match the right format. Pathetic, he dropped it onto the porch as if it dirtied his fingers. But as he did, something caught his attention, a faint mark inked onto the taller man's wrist, a tattoo, small and deliberate. It wasn't decorative. It wasn't random. Marcus knew that design. His mind cataloged it instantly. A crude insignia belonging to a gang he had been tracking for months. A violent offshoot tied to smuggling. Roots and multiple killings. The realization hit him with chilling clarity. These weren't overzealous neighbors or pranksters in costume. They weren't freelancing frauds looking for quick cash. They were pawns recruited, dressed up, and sent straight to his door. And if they were pawns, then someone far more dangerous was pulling the strings. Marcus's calm expression didn't waver, but his pulse thrummed with a sharpened edge. He looked at the taller man, who was still frozen, half leaning on the railing. "Where'd you get the ink?" Marcus asked evenly, nodding toward the tattoo. The man swallowed hard. It's nothing, just a design." Marcus stepped forward, his boot pressing down harder on the holstered weapon, keeping it pinned. His gaze was unblinking, suffocating. "Oh, that's not a design, that's a brand. And the men who wear it don't waste time with homeowner complaints." Man's lips quivered. His eyes darted to his partner on the ground, still locked in Marcus's iron grip. Panic began to seep through the cracks of his defiance. "Listen," Marcus said, his voice dropping into the quiet tone that had made cartel bosses confess without. "Realizing it, you've got exactly one chance to tell me why you're here. Lie to me, and I promise you'll regret it." The man shifted, caught between fight and flight, his chest heaving. His fingers twitched uselessly near his side, but Marcus didn't need a gun to control him. Fear was enough. Finally, the taller man spoke, words tumbling out in broken fragments. We were told to bring you in, said you were just some guy, just some civilian." We didn't know." Marcus' grip tightened on the man beneath him until another pained cry filled the air. "Didn't know what?" Marcus pressed, his voice cutting like steel. "That you're FBI," the taller man admitted. The confession slipping free like poison from a wound. Silence stretched. The words hung in the cool morning air, heavy and damning. Marcus's lips curled into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course they didn't tell you. Guess. They had, you'd never have shown up here. You'd have run as far and as fast as you could." The taller man flinched as Marcus finally let his boot off the pistol. In one smooth motion, Marcus kicked it away across the porch out of reach. With the same calm efficiency, he forced the younger imposter up onto his knees, twisting his arm behind him until the man whimpered. "You think the Bureau doesn't know your tricks?" Marcus asked, his voice rising just enough to carry a dangerous resonance. "You think dressing up like cops and throwing around fake badges is going to scare me? You've made a career-ending mistake?" Both men trembled, the facade of authority completely shattered. They weren't predators anymore, they were prey, cornered by something they couldn't comprehend. But Marcus wasn't finished, not even close. He dragged the younger man inside, shoving him against the wall just past the doorway. The taller one hesitated, then stumbled in behind him under Marcus's commanding glare. Once inside, Marcus grabbed the fallen zip ties and bound their wrists with a precision they couldn't match. He knew exactly how much force to apply, how to lock the joints so escape would be impossible without breaking bones. Now they sat side by side against his living room wall, their bravado reduced to wide-eyed silence. Marcus crouched in front of them, his gaze sharp as a blade. "You're going to tell me everything?" he said softly, almost gently. "Who sent you? Why you came? And what you thought you were going to do with me once you got me in your car?" Neither spoke. They looked at each other, panic flickering. In their eyes, Marcus tilted his head, studying them like insects under glass. He reached out and tapped the tattoo again, his finger pressing hard against the man's wrist. "You wear this mark and you think I don't know what it means? I've been watching your little friends longer than you've been wearing diapers? You think I don't know the hierarchy? The safe houses, the shipments. I've buried men who wore this mark, and I never even broke a sweat. The taller man shook his head quickly. No, you don't understand. We were just told to, then make me understand. Marcus cut in sharply, his voice echoing through the room. The younger imposter, the one Marcus had taken down first, broke. His voice cracked as the words spilled out. We were told you're a target. They've been asking questions. They've been watching the wrong people. They wanted you out of the way before you got too close. Marcus's eyes narrowed. The puzzle pieces began to fall into place. A network. A larger plan. Someone had been watching him all along, waiting for the right moment to strike. Names? Marcus demanded. Give me names. Neither answered. Their silence told him enough. They were scared of someone far worse than him. Marcus had dealt with that kind of fear before. Fear of bosses, fear of leaders, fear of death. And he knew how to break it. You're terrified of them, Marcus said softly, his voice almost empathetic. But let me tell you something. They're not the ones in this room right now. I am. If you think they're scarier than me, then you really don't know who you're dealing with. He stood slowly, his imposing frame casting a shadow. Over them, his phone buzzed on the counter, but he didn't reach for it.
Not yet.
He wanted to squeeze every drop of truth out of them before backup arrived. Because now, Marcus knew this wasn't just a cheap stunt. It wasn't random. It was the beginning of something bigger. And whoever thought sending imposters to his front door was a clever idea had just made the worst mistake of their lives. Marcus smiled faintly, a dark, cold smile. You were sent to arrest me, but you've just been drafted into something you don't understand. And I promise you this, you're not walking away clean. The two men sat trembling, the weight of their decision sinking in. Marcus knew it was only a matter of time before one of them cracked. When they did, the entire chain leading back to the people who wanted him gone would unravel. For now, though, Marcus was content. Because in less than 5 minutes, the hunters had become the hunted. And the man they thought was just another neighbor was about to show them why criminals across the country feared his name. And as he stared them down, Marcus already knew the game had only just begun. The taller man's breathing came in ragged gasps, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air drifting in through the half-open door. His partner winced against the wall, wrists bound, his face pale with the sting of humiliation and fear. Both of them sat there like cornered animals, waiting for the predator to decide their fate. Marcus paced slowly in front of them, each measured step on the hardwood floor, echoing with quiet authority. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to wave a weapon. His silence, his composure, was more terrifying than any threat they had faced before. The taller one swallowed hard. We didn't know who you were, he stammered again, repeating himself as if clinging to a flimsy defense. Marcus crouched in front of him, his eyes leveled at the man's trembling ones. His tone was calm, steady, surgical. That's not what I asked. I want the name of the person who sent you. It's the one who gave you those fake badges. The one who told you to knock on my door? The younger man groaned, shaking his head frantically. We can't. You don't know what they'll do to us. You don't understand. Oh, I understand, Marcus said, his voice suddenly sharp, the steel edge slicing through the room. I've seen what fear of men like that does. But let me make something very clear. Whatever nightmare you think they'll unleash on you will make what happens right here, right now, feel like a blessing compared to what's coming if you stay silent. The taller one broke into a cold sweat. His lips moved, but no words came out. Marcus leaned closer, his face inches away, his gaze unrelenting. The weight of his presence bore down like an avalanche, crushing every last ounce of defiance. Finally, the younger one cracked. His voice was barely above a whisper. His name's Duran. Victor Duran. Marcus's eyes narrowed, recognition flashing across his face. Duran? He knew the name. A mid-level lieutenant in a sprawling criminal syndicate Marcus had been building a case against for months. A man slippery enough to evade arrests, ruthless enough to leave bodies in his wake, but never bold enough to take on the FBI directly. If Duran had sent these imposters, then something had shifted. They weren't just defending their operation anymore. They were playing offense. Victor Duran, Marcus repeated softly, letting the name roll off his tongue like a curse. And he thought sending you to clowns to my doorstep would be enough to take me out. The taller man flinched. Didn't know, I swear. He just told us to come. Said you were making problems. He said if we handled it, we'd be in. In? Marcus asked, his voice sharp. The younger one nodded quickly. Into the crew. Official. No more side jobs. No more proving ourselves. Just respect, protection. Marcus let out a low, humorless laugh. So you thought impersonating cops and trying to drag me out of my home was your ticket to respect? He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that made the hair on their necks stand up.
Oh.
You just signed your own death warrants.
Where my wall now was Subramola. Rid now road. Promarowella. I die. Riles.
Their silence wasn't defiance this time. It was dread. Marcus straightened and pulled his phone from his pocket. He dialed a secure line, his fingers moving with precision born of habit. The call connected almost immediately. Williams. Came the steady voice on the other end. It's me, Marcus said, his tone clipped businesslike. I've got 2 imposters in custody, fake cops, sent by Victor Duran. He glanced at the trembling men on the floor. They came straight to my front door. I need a pickup team. Quiet, no lights, no sirens. Copy that, the voice replied. 10 minutes out. Marcus hung up and slipped the phone back into his pocket. He turned back to the 2 men. You've got 10 minutes to decide how much you value your lives. Because when that door opens again, it won't be me you're answering to, it'll be the Bureau. And trust me, their patience isn't as generous as mine. The taller one slumped against the wall, his face pale, his breath shallow. The younger one started to mutter prayers under his breath, rocking slightly as if motion could shield him from the storm he knew was coming. Marcus watched them quietly, his mind already moving ahead. Duran wasn't stupid. Sending imposters like this was reckless, but it wasn't without purpose. He wasn't trying to win, he was trying to send a message. Marcus had gotten too close, dug too deep into whatever Duran was building, and now the man was desperate enough to risk poking the bear. But desperation made men sloppy, and sloppy was Marcus' favorite kind of enemy. He crouched again, looking the taller man in the eye. Tell me something. How were you supposed to get me out of here? What was the plan? The man hesitated, then whispered, Van, down the street. We were supposed to take you to the old warehouse near the docks. Marcus' jaw tightened. The docks, of course. That was Durant's territory. A maze of abandoned buildings, rusting containers, and too many shadows to count. He had known Duran was operating there, but hearing it confirmed by the imposter only solidified the picture. Duran wasn't hiding anymore. He was luring Marcus in. The younger one's voice cracked as he added, We didn't think you'd fight back. They said you wouldn't. They said you were just some guy. Marcus' smirk was dark, humorless. They lied to you. And you believed them? That's on you. Minutes ticked by, heavy with tension. Then headlights swept briefly across the street outside. Marcus moved to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to see the black SUVs rolling in, silent and deliberate. The Bureau had arrived. The imposters tensed, their bodies stiff with terror. Marcus turned back to them, his expression unreadable. Showtime. The front door opened, and 3 FBI agents in tactical gear slipped inside, weapons low but ready. They moved with the precision of men who didn't need to pretend. In seconds, The impostors were in proper restraints, hauled to their feet, and marched out without ceremony. One of the agents paused, glancing at Marcus. "What do you want done with them?" Marcus' gaze followed the two men as they were shoved into the waiting SUVs. "Put them on ice. Interrogate them separately. They'll break." One of them already mentioned Duran. "Get every detail you can. I'll follow the trail myself." The agent nodded. "You're not supposed to work this alone, Williams." Marcus gave him a look, sharp and unyielding. "I don't work cases, I end them." The agent didn't argue. He knew better. When the last SUV pulled away, Marcus stood alone on his porch. The morning sun had risen higher now, casting golden light across the quiet suburban street. Neighbors watered lawns, walked dogs, carried on with the routines of ordinary life. Unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface, Marcus inhaled deeply, the cool air filling his lungs. He knew the peace of this neighborhood was an illusion, fragile and temporary. Duran had already shattered the quiet with his brazen move, and Marcus couldn't let it stand. He walked back inside, shutting the door firmly behind him. His coffee still sat on the counter, long gone cold. He lifted the mug, took a sip, and set it down again. The bitter taste grounded him, reminded him that he was still here, still standing, but he wasn't satisfied. He sat at the table, pulling out a notepad from the drawer. His pen moved quickly, jotting down connections, leads, fragments of information he had gathered over months. Duran, the docks, the network behind him, the pawns he had already burned. Marcus could see the shape of the enemy now, forming like a shadow on the wall. They thought they could scare him into retreat. They thought sending imposters with fake badges would shake him, make him cautious. But all they had done was light a fire that burned hotter than before. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his eyes cold, determined. They had come to arrest him, they had failed, and now he would return the favor. No more waiting. No more playing defense. The game had changed, and Marcus Williams was already moving the pieces. And somewhere in the city, Victor Duran would soon learn the truth that criminals across the country already knew too well. When you come after Marcus Williams, you don't get second chances. The imposters thought they had walked into his home to take him away. But the reality was far darker. By knocking on his door, they hadn't just failed their mission, they had opened the gates to a hunt, and Marcus was ready to collect. The end.